Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1991 film All-American Murder. This is a Vinegar Syndrome release. It looks great for that reason, and it's one I enjoyed, but it's also one that's going to be rated in two different ways: as a film in the pantheon of all films, and also as a so bad it's good film, because it is, especially because of the dialogue, a so bad it's good film. Also, I'm just going to show you right here the best gore scene slash practical effects scene in the film, represented on the back. Love that they did that for the slipcase. Oh, and in case people are curious, this was the actual release cover art. Kind of looks like the same one from the movie JFK. Kind of weird. Anyway, I prefer what Vinegar Syndrome did to it. But let's get into this film. Directed by Anson Williams, who, by the way, is probably best known as playing Potsy on Happy Days. Also directed a lot of stuff, including Diagnosis Murder episodes of Sequest, Star Trek Voyager, Melrose Place, Beverly Hills 90210, Baywatch, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Lizzie McGuire, and The Secret Life of the American Teenager, just to name a few, because he had a lot of directing credits. Written by Barry Sandler, who also wrote a few scripts that I've noted here, including The Loners, Kansas City Bomber, The Mirror Cracked, Crimes of Passion, Evil Never Dies, and Knock 'em Dead. Just to name a few. Like I said, they've done a bunch of other stuff. Ken Russell originally was supposed to be the director of this film. Now, yes, the Ken Russell who directed the film Tommy. And also, in that same vein, Don Johnson was supposed to play the role of Decker that Christopher Walken ended up playing. You know, when you hear those types of things, it makes you wonder, you know, what would Ken Russell have done differently directing-wise? What would Don Johnson have done different in that role of Decker? So I always kind of do those mental gymnastics with that stuff. Filmed in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, with the football scenes filmed at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater. So, just so people know. Once you get into this film, it's cool images of the snake and then the blowtorch. Obviously, that's kind of just imagery of what happened in Artie's past in order to get him into jail, where he is when you first see him in the film, in a very kind of odd scene, in my opinion. I didn't really like that scene a whole lot, but yeah. So, but they're intriguing images. It's like, ooh, the snake, kind of dangerous, kind of interesting. Ooh, then a blowtorch, also kind of dangerous, kind of interesting. But it also kind of hints at stuff coming up in the film, because the blowtorch comes into play at the end of the film. The snake was kind of in the beginning of the film, and they kind of represent the two people who are most important in the film, being Artie and Tally. So he's the snake, she's the blowtorch, even though they both also kind of represent Artie at the same time. So I kind of like that. The scene with Artie getting out of jail is just very odd, but it said to me immediately, this could easily be a so bad it's good film, and that's what it ended up being for me personally. It might not play that way for everyone, but that's how I kind of viewed this film, especially because of the dialogue. The dialogue is pretty ridiculous and over the top at times, so yeah. Talking about more of that as it goes on. They go pretty hard at Artie being a complete outcast screw-up. Yeah. He just gets out of jail, you're already going hard at it. Then he's in the car talking to his father, who's extremely upset with him, kind of laying bare kind of all his dirty laundry for the audience. So it really just is kind of like they're punching you in the face repeatedly as to, he's an outcast, he's a bad kid, he's been doing all these things, acting out to get attention, and be this guy who's not the normal guy. He's not the all-American that they talk about in this film, but it's funny because in the end of the film, the person who seems to be the most all-American, who Artie is attracted to, is the person committing the murder, which is probably why it's called All-American Murder. Makes a lot of sense. It's a hint at who the killer actually is in this film. And I do want to take a moment to say, this is a very Giallo-inspired film. Notice I didn't say it's a Giallo film. It's not a Giallo film. It's very Giallo-inspired, because if you think about all the stuff at play in here, black-gloved, trench-coated killer POV being used in it, got some weird characters, there's a lot of sexualization to the film, there's the huge mystery left to the end of who's done it. borrowed a lot from Giallo. So that's why I say this is a Giallo-inspired film. Early on, I found myself loving the soundtrack. That's one of the big things that really sucked me into this film. I love the soundtrack in this movie. Lots and lots of fun. Big fan of the soundtrack of this one. Especially that title track. That title track, so much fun. Love it. And I love that they kind of end the film running the credits with that. Makes me actually watch the credits, which I don't always do. I know there are some people who are like, you should, because all these people worked on it. I get it, but at the same time, a little boring. Artie's boning the dean's wife. Nothing could possibly go wrong with this. And in the end, nothing really did go wrong because he was boning the dean's wife, because as we kind of find out later, we find out the dean has also been boning students. So it's kind of like Erica, the wife, she kind of alludes to the fact that it's like this competition between she and Darby Allin. Oh my gosh, I watch AEW wrestling. A Dean Darby. Between her and Dean Darby, it's like this competition to see who can bang the most students, which is also kind of like a so bad it's good aspect to this film, but I think it's kind of funny. So they take the portion of Artie being smitten with Tally too far. And I mean this by too far to the point where it doesn't seem like he's being sweet or just so smitten with her. He's an obsessive stalker-like person, which maybe they intentionally did that to kind of make you think, well, maybe there is something going on with him, and we, the audience, are being tricked into thinking that he's not the killer, when in the end it'll be revealed that he is the killer. Maybe it's like the split personality thing where, like, he seems like a good, normal, nice guy who's just an outcast, but then he snaps, and that's not what we're seeing, and he's actually doing the killing. So I'm thinking maybe that's why they kind of chose to take it a little too far and make him seem more stalkery, obsessive with her. But I think it also kind of serves to put you in the mindset of like understanding why other characters in the film would think that he was the killer for those reasons. The creepy, dirty-looking guy, who we find out later his name is Harry, that Artie runs into at the sorority, is an obvious red herring. Because you know that, and this is even before the murders start. Like, he's an obvious red herring. If you've seen enough Giallo films, you know they have to introduce that strong red herring first. They also introduce the dean in this very menacing way as well. His first kind of confrontation with Artie at the football field. And the way they shoot that is like, they shoot him kind of from, like, shooting him from below. So he looks like very imposing. And his attitude is really terrible towards Artie. And obviously he's the main character. So you're, more glommed onto him as a character. So he's set up kind of like a villain type character. So he's kind of like a red herring strongly. But the strongest, most like bash you over the head red herring is that dude Harry, who, ends up being a perv, but not a murderer. You get the sense that a relationship with Tally could put Artie on a more straight and narrow path in life, and he even actually talks about this later when he's being interrogated by Decker the first time, is he basically says, like, I've been a screw-up all my life. I saw her, like, she's the all-American girl. She's everything, like, wonderful and perfect. And I thought, if I can be with her, like, I would be that person as well, in essence. And you see that before they even say it out loud. So it makes me wish that he never said it out loud in that scene with Decker, because you don't really need it. Like, you can tell that that's what's going on. But, I don't know, some other people may prefer that he actually, says it out loud. So, whatever, to each their own. They pull out that typical killer POV shot to make you feel like there's a lurking danger. Again, one of the things, like I was saying, borrowed heavily from Giallo films, and then slashers borrowed from Giallo films. So some films borrowed from slashers who were borrowing from Giallos. So, yeah, it's this cycle. But, It is effective. It's extremely effective when they start throwing that in there, where it's like, oh, we can tell that the camera work is supposed to be a person watching these people, and that's going on when Tally and Artie are together initially. So it gives you this idea, ooh, there's some lurking danger here. So it kind of ratchets things up a bit, even before the murder. Dean Darby seems like a real ass. And he seems like he's out to get Artie, which is another reason that he's put in this kind of red herring category, because they do go at him hard with being like, he has something against Artie. So when the murder happens and you feel like as an audience member, you're identifying with Artie and being like, yeah, I think he's being framed. You're like, well, the dean really, really hates him, and he made it well known early on in the film. So the slow motion sequence that marks the first murder, awful. I hate that. We think initially that that's Tally who's on fire, but by the end, obviously, we find out that it's someone who kind of looked like her, who she set on fire, who apparently no one discovered was missing. I don't really understand that whole situation. Unless she, like, went out of town and got someone, and I don't know. It's weird. That kind of wasn't explained. Bit of a plot hole with that, but, you know. This film ends up in the it's so bad it's good category for me, so there are certain things you forgive with films that end up in that category. I'll just say that. But I hate that whole thing. It was something that became very popular in the 90s as like these slow motion sequences. They look terrible. I wonder, did people think they looked good back then? Like me in the 90s, did I think they looked good? I can't remember. But they definitely don't look good now. So seeing it now, you're like, whoa, this is terrible. There were hints that Tally was going to die. And it kind of like is stronger at the foreshadowing that then makes people convinced that Tally actually did die. And those kind of foreshadowing things were her feeling uneasy at the cemetery, talking about that. But then also when she was at the football field and she said, I'll sleep when I'm dead. So that not long after that, she dies, you know. So, yeah. The very first Decker scene, I think, is wild. He goes so over the top yelling at the guy about boning his wife. I thought that was hilarious. Also, I don't know how much of that was actually like Christopher Walken just doing Christopher Walken improv stuff, because I watched the special features on this, and apparently they said Charlie Schlatter, the guy who played Artie, who, by the way, I thought seemed very Matthew Broderick-esque in the way he talked and acted. And then I found out, looking at his IMDb page, he was in a TV show version of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Go figure. Anyway, he said in his interview that Christopher Walken was kind of given carte blanche. And then there's an interview on there with the DP, who then, director of photography, who then said that Walken, when you would do multiple takes of any scene, he would give you something totally different each take. And that's like he thinks his like method. So I don't know if that whole over-the-top thing about him yelling at the guy through the bullhorn about boning his wife to piss him off so he'd run out at him and he can shoot him, I don't know if that was like Walken or if that was a script. But it was pretty over-the-top, plays into the whole so bad it's good. The filmmaker really focused on Decker eating a pickle when he's going through Artie's house. Or his apartment, whatever it is. It looks like an apartment at that point. He's not, like, on campus, really. But the whole, like, eating a pickle thing... First, he takes the food out of the fridge, and that's weird. And then they're focusing on, like, the snap that he's getting from eating this pickle. Also weird. Again, goes with the whole so bad it's good. Decker is surrounded by cops who just want the easy answer. But he's committed to doing the thing right. That's the big thing that you get here, is that Decker's so good at what he does, which is what the first scene with him sets up. And then everyone else around him is not interested in doing their job properly. They just want to pin this on the first most obvious suspect. It almost to the point where you think that maybe, what's his name? Is it Frank and Lou, the other two cops, that they're out there killing people just to pin it on Artie? I thought about that for a minute. And Decker puts Artie on a clock to prove his own innocence. I think that's weird. I don't think, obviously a cop would never do something like that, but it's been established that Christopher Walken's character, Decker, does not play by the rules. He does his own thing, so it doesn't fully surprise you that he's just like, look, we can't hold you right now, and you've got this much time to prove yourself innocent. Weird. Real quick, pause for horror hydration. Sorry about that. I like how Decker then shows up to just remind Artie how much time he has left to prove his innocence. Kind of a weird thing. And then Artie even says, like, oh, look, you wasted an hour of my time. I have to be out there running around proving my innocence. And you get the feeling that, like, Decker's putting the pressure on him, saying that, like, I could nail you. But then he's also acting like, I don't really think you did it. And he even says it in the beginning of everything. It's like, I don't really think you did it. But then he also says things contrary to that when there are more bodies that start to kind of pile up. But he doesn't act that way. He kind of acts more like a friend to Artie. But goes with the so bad it's good. And the red herring shows up again, but just to sniff some panties. That character of Harry, the perv, who I guess is like a maintenance man or a custodian at the sorority. Yeah, he's just kind of like sneaking in the bedroom, sniffing panties, stealing dirty photos, all that stuff. When Artie goes to see Wendy about the tape he found, you see the chemistry between the two. That led me to believe like how similar they were and how they were connecting so much, especially when everyone else thinks on campus that he's a murderer and she's so trusting of him. That just told me I feel like they're going to end up being together in the end. Either that or she's actually the killer. And that's the reason she's like so nice to him. So, I don't know. But a flaw in Tally's character appears when Wendy tells the story of her shoplifting. That's the first little crack you see in her all-American facade. Yeah, she was putting up these airs about being that all-American girl, being so perfect. Yet here she was shoplifting. Wendy promised she wouldn't say anything about it. She tried to get Wendy in the sorority, and that didn't go well. And then Wendy's just this, outcast. I love how Decker broke into Artie's place to chat with him. Odd. Another one of those moments of, hey, just kind of checking in, just letting you know you're on the clock, better prove your innocence or something. That type of thing. But it was a funny thing. And he's just like sitting there watching his TV on the couch. It's so ridiculous that Frank and Lou openly talk about forcing things in the investigation just to pin everything on Artie. I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but it was very over the top of that. Like, there are ways you can just, like, allude to the fact that they would, kind of force things in the investigation. But the fact that they, like, loudly talk about it at the precinct is just kind of ridiculous to me. It's funny when Harry is coming for Artie with the drill in the basement of the sorority, and Artie easily whacks him in the head to knock him out. And then, obviously, he's killed after that because the killer, who we don't know who they are at that point, drills him in the forehead. He goes back and, a guy I just whacked on the head is dead now. Makes it look like I killed another person. Why did Doug let Artie take the dirty photos back? He could have quickly destroyed those. I mean, he literally could have just, like, tore them up. He could have run away with them and kept them. He could have run away with them and burned them. Run to a room, pull out a lighter, burn those suckers. But he lets Artie have them back, and there's just like, don't let anyone see those. Those are the only copies. It's not like this is the digital age in the 90s where people have them backed up on their computer or something, or they've been emailed somewhere. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm like, just take them. If you don't want those out there, just take them. Get rid of them. So that was weird. Interesting secret life that Tally and Doug had. Speaks to the issues with the pressures of society and family, which I'll talk a little bit more about at the very end of all this. But yeah, that's the first moment that things are like really rocked. I mean, you hear about the shoplifting thing with Tally and you're kind of like, oh, that's a little weird for how like perfect she seems. But then this thing is like not just the next level, it's like the next 2 levels. She and Doug were basically so sick of living these perfect lives. Outwardly, they wanted to be bad, so they were going out of town on weekends to find a sex worker and party with them with drugs and sex in a hotel room. And it's like, wow, okay. And they were hiding this. And this was shocking to everyone. And finally, Erica shows up yet again in the film, and there was no way that she was in the beginning of this film for no reason. You knew at some point she would be playing some sort of role in this film. The role she ends up playing is another victim, to yet again make it look like Artie is the killer, with the whole snake thing in the car. I thought for a little bit maybe she would end up being the killer because she was jealous of Tally, but I'm glad that I was wrong because that would be a little too obvious. So Tally was getting it on with Dean Darby too. That's when you find out that that's going on. That's when you find out she has the dirt on him. Obviously, Erica, Dean Darby's wife, is saying that she believes he's the one who killed Tally. Obviously, she's super wrong about that, but yeah. Yet another level added to this. Wow, what was going on with Tally thing. Just like in Giallo films, since Erica doesn't go to the authorities when she's revealed who the killer is, she will die. That's another thing that they borrowed from Giallo films, where if someone is saying, oh, I know who did it, yet they're not going to the correct people to give them the information right then, they're going to die. And obviously, Erica does die. Then Doug gets it. Like, literally, like, not even a minute after Erica gets killed, Doug is killed in Artie's apartment, which I don't understand why Doug was even there in the first place. I don't know. That was kind of a weird thing. I do like how they find Artie with 2 more bodies, and then they just kind of talk to him instead of really taking any sort of action, of acting hostilely towards him, of being like, yeah, you're arrested right now because there are more dead bodies, and it looks like quite possibly you are the killer, that they wouldn't take him in to interrogate him one more time or put him in jail, because this isn't Tally's body, which they had to release him for. These are 2 new bodies, which they could hold him about and question him about. But they're just like, they just talk to him. It's such a weird thing. So bad it's good film. Dean Darby's body is a great gory payoff in the movie. The best, obviously, because all the other deaths aren't really that great. The fire, the first one where you think it's Tally's body on fire, that actually looked kind of solid with like tons of flames going on. But other than that, you didn't get anything good for quite a while. The snake death was horrible. You don't even see Doug get stabbed. The drill was okay, but the grenade in the pants, I mean, pretty great. That's a pièce de résistance. Frank and Lou don't search Artie before taking him in, which leads to him using his lighter that he still has on him to get loose. He has those papers in the back with him, lights them on fire, throws them in the front, starts smoking them out, plus there's fire between them. Then they stop, he gets out. Idiots. Like, that would never happen. They would search him if they were going to be taking him in, 100%. And Tally's reputation was all a facade, and she ends up being revealed to be the killer. Then she goes after Decker. Decker gets saved by Artie, and then there's this bro relationship between Decker and Artie, which was kind of forming the entire film. I mean, it kind of started immediately as soon as the two met each other. Kind of weird. Even though I do like the soundtrack in this film, it was too loud in comparison to the line deliveries. So I didn't really like that aspect of it, but I like the soundtrack. The dialogue is pretty bad, but since it's so bad it's good kind of film, it's fun having kind of ridiculous dialogue. If this was going to be like a legitimately good film, that dialogue would be a huge problem for it, but it enhances the film for me because it is in that so bad it's good category. The interesting aspect of this movie is how its commentary on how societal ideals of perfection aren't real, and it creates more problems than anything to have that pressure on people. Because you get the idea that Tally ended up cracking so much because of all this pressure placed on her, because she was outwardly being someone she actually was not, and she had to hide the secret life of who she really was. And you do even get the idea that a lot of what she was doing, like the sexual trysts on the weekend, the shoplifting, all of that, was kind of her just doing it because she was so sick of feeling like she was such a goody-goody. So, just saying. So I love that aspect of the film. But it was a fun film. As an overall film in the pantheon of all films, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 stars. But as a So Bad It's Good film, I'm going to put it at 3. It gets an extra star as a So Bad It's Good film. 3 stars on that. But this is where I'd love to hear your thoughts on All American Murder. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, in between. Would love to hear your opinions on it. Also, go ahead and do me a favor. Hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. Also, hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 a week at this point. Regardless, I really do thank you for watching this particular video. And until next time, keep it brutal.